Hi everyone, today we're going to take a look at this Asus ProArt X870E Creator Wi-Fi motherboard, which support the latest AMD 9000 series processor. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Asus Singapore to have provided this unit for me to share with you guys. These are all the accessories when you unpack from the box. You'll be provided with a souvenir piece. This is a piece of ruler. For your information, this material is exactly the same as your motherboard, which is 8-layer PCB. And over the other side, you have the imprint of the ProArt logo. Nice touch. Followed by a M.2 slider. This is whereby if your M.2 is shorter, when you plug to the motherboard, right, make use of this slider to fasten the M.2. A set of M.2 clips. These are spares. In the event if you were to break the M.2 clip which is mounted on the motherboard, you can use this as a replacement. 4 pieces of M.2 rubber pad. The front I/O connector for easy connection, whereby you just use this end over here to plug to the motherboard. And over at the other end where you see all these pins, right, this is meant for you to plug your case I/O connector to this, and it's labeled on the connector where you have hard disk LED, the power LED, the reset switch, and the power switch. A set of SATA cables, or should I say 2 sets of SATA cables. One set of right angle and the other set straight. A 0.5 meter DP cable, whereby one end will be connected to your to your GPU out, and the other end connect to your motherboard in. Then you can make use of the Type C port to project out on a Type C monitor. This is the antenna, and they have enhanced the antenna. This is sweepable, and I believe this is magnetic. Now the enhancement is actually made on the connection side, whereby in the past, right, you need to screw this tool to the back of your rear I/O, but for this, right, they have enhanced it as in like to clip on it or to pull it out to release. I'll show you later. A leaflet on the Asus web storage, whereby you are provided with 200GB free, and if you wanted more cloud storage, you have to purchase from Asus. The quick starter guide, whereby I show you where to place your stuff like your RAMs and such, and how to do the fitment of your M.2s and much more. As for this is in fact a application, or should I say a console application, known as the Asus Control Center Express. And what this does, right, it will be deemed useful if you are in a small organization or even at enterprise level, where you have multiple of Asus PC that's connected to the same network. You can make use of this application to remotely control all those PC, or to push out applications like patches and such to the PCs. So this is only deemed useful if you are in a small organization and you have various, or should I say a few, Asus products. So we can make use of this application. This is how the motherboard looks like, and I always like to look at the ProArt version more than any Asus motherboard. Reason being, right, it looks very adult, very executive, very sleek. Just to show you the imprint logo, where you can see this rear cover, right, it has the ProArt wording in gold and all the linings. Now ruler defined, it's like a defined definition of perfect, pitch perfect. That's why you have all these ruler lines over here, which symbolize what this board can deliver. And besides this, right, the ProArt architecture way of designing the rear VRM inclusive of the nice armor shield over here that has the logo ProArt. And of course, this is where the X870E chipset is, and it stretches all the way. In fact, it stretches the whole armor shield right to the back. And this covering right is just a plastic cover with the design. And again, at the bottom, this is the M.2 shield. This is also the M.2 shield. All nicely done. Now, speaking about the measurement first, is a ATX motherboard. So from here to here is at 305mm. From the top to the bottom over here is at 244mm. As for the thickness of the side VRM, now this is important, whereby if you want to mount thick radiator in a case, right, you might worry to hit the side VRM heatsink or the rear heatsink. So let me just give you the measurements. From the base of the motherboard to the top of this side VRM heatsink is at 35mm. And at the rear, right, now I believe actually this is protruding out. Okay, let me just show you. See, it's protruding out. So you will need to take note on this. The measurements, right, from the rear, which is at 43, right, when you measure this, right, this is at 45. So do take note on this. This VRM heatsink might not be as chunky as its brothers and sisters like the Strix or the Hero, but it is still very beefy to cool down the VRM. The power phase of this motherboard is at 16 plus 2 plus 2 with a 80M choke. At this section, this is the LGA 1718 socket, and this is how it looks like. And this socket supports the AM5 series, which is the 7000, 8000 or 9000. At all times, please do not leave this unlocked unless you place the processor and to lock it in place. If you to leave this open, right, and accidentally dent any pin inside, you can't use this motherboard. So at all time, make sure that it's closed and it's locked. At this lower section over here, there are a total of 4 DIMM slots, and it's meant for your DDR5 RAMs. And it runs in dual channel and has a capacity of 192 gig. And the max X-Pro profile is at 8000. There are a total of 3 PCIe slots, as you can see over here, where the first 2 slots is controlled by your processor, and this last slot is controlled by the X870E chipset. Now, if you were to populate your graphic card on either first or second slot, it will be running on full X16 lane. If you to populate both at the same time, as in like place 2 graphic cards at the same time, it will be X8, X8, and the last slot will be X4. Total capacity of the M.2, there are a total of 4, which you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, with the top 2 controlled by the processor, which is generation 5 and is backward compatible. Else for the bottom section, 1, 2 is controlled by the X870E chipset. There is a very unique way to release the armor shield for the M.2 at the top section. All is needed. Okay, let me just zoom in and show you. Press this down, and this will be out. Okay, let me just zoom back. Okay, you saw what I did. So the action is pretty straightforward. You just press it down. Now when you're pressing this down, right, make sure the other hand is supporting this. If not, see, you just spring out. Okay, so I repeat that again. Just press this down, and it's been removed. And to put this back, you see this over here? This is to be slot to this area. Okay, let me just probably zoom in. See, you have a slot over here. So align this, I should say catch to that. I mean to this hole over here. And once it's done, right, you can just press it down and you'll be locked in place. Now, to mount the M.2 is pretty straightforward too. As you can see, there's one catch over here. So you just slot it in, pull this latch. Okay, let's see. Pull this latch to the back and clip it. See, it's that easy. And to release this, just press this latch back and you will just spring off and you can just remove. And as you can see, right, both sides at the bottom and at the top is with thermal pad. Now for the rest of the M.2, let me just zoom out. For the rest of the M.2, which is here, here and here, right, you got to remove the, unscrew the screws. There are a total of 4, and to take it out. And these screws are captive to the armor shield. See, as I mentioned, the screws are captive, so you don't have to worry that it will go missing. Now, as for how to connect the M.2s over here, right, it's straightforward too. Let me just zoom in and show you. They are all the same mechanism. If you can see here, right, see, these are the clips. Okay, you just need to push down when you clip it. So what you need to do is just to slot your M.2. Okay, place it down, push this clip down, and you lock in place. And to release, just press. See, it's super easy. For the lower section M.2 shield, which is this, take note, you only have thermal pad at the top, but not at the bottom. Also, something to take note, if you are using an 8000 series AMD processor on this motherboard, the second PCIe slot will be disabled. Same goes to the second M.2 slot. You can't use these two ports at all. And for M.2, which is on the top slot, the bottom 2 slot you can use, but on the top slot you can't use generation 5. You can only use generation 4, which makes this 3 port all generation 4 based on the limitation of the 8000 series processor. For the connectivity on this board, or should I say start with the audio, they have embedded a ALC1220p 7.1 surround sound high definition codec. For the headers, starting off here, this is the front I/O port, whereby it enables you to plug your headphone and microphone jack. Followed by a COM port, a 4-pin PWM fan connector, 2 addressable 3-pin 5V connector, and right at the top where you see this, right, this is meant for you to plug a external debug device to diagnose the system as in like advanced troubleshooting. But I don't think any one of us will be using this. This is for advanced user. Next, you have 3 USB 2.0 port, 2 SATA port, 3 sensor header, whereby the sensor cable, right, you need to purchase that yourself and to plug it over here. And the sensor you can place anywhere you wanted to detect the temperature. Next, a 4-pin PWM fan connector and the front I/O connector, whereby you plug your power switch, your reset switch, the power LED indicator, and the hard disk LED. Moving along the front, you have a right angle SATA port, total of 2, the right angle 3.2 USB port, which is meant for your front I/O USB socket. Next, another 4-pin PWM fan connector, a Type-C connector, which is for your front I/O, a 24-pin socket, which is meant for you to plug your PSU 24 pin cable to this to supply power to all the components on the motherboard itself. Next, at the top section, you have another addressable 3-pin 5V ARGB. Then this is the over voltage, or should I say enable higher voltage. Okay, there is a deep switch over here, but I would to advise you to leave it this way. If you need higher voltage to overclock your processor, right, and if you're running probably, you know, liquid nitrogen to do overclocking, right, you need more voltage. You can just unplug this pin, okay, or should I say this what do you call it, the deep plug, and to move it up. So when you're doing this location, right, it means to say that you have unleashed the full power. You can draw as much V core as possible, but for normal usage, I don't think you need to do this. Just leave it as it is on the safe side, so you won't, you know, draw too much V core, just for normal operation use. Next, you have 3, okay, these are covered with protective rubbers, 3 4-pin PWM fan headers, where 1 is for your CPU, 2 is for your CPU op, and the last one is for your water pump. Next, you have this 2 8-pin EPS connector, and these are enforced with metal, so it's very strong. This is what I like to see on the rear. There are tons of sockets, starting off with the left, where you can see DP in. Kindly do not take this as in you plug your DP cable and you can, you know, project on your monitor. No, this is not the port for it. I'll explain to you what this port is meant for. At the bottom is a HDMI port. Yes, this can display out to your monitor, and you can project out at 4K 60Hz if you are using the integrated graphic on your processor. Next, you'll be provided with total of 7 USB type A port, and all this, right, has the capability of transfer rate 10 gig. At the bottom here, as you can see, there are 3. These are type C, where the first 2 over here is 40 gig transfer rate, and they are USB 4, and this has 20 gig transfer rate. Now, at the top, you have 2 Ethernet socket. One is 10 gig, one is 2.5 gig. At the bottom over here, another USB type A. This is version 2.0, where you plug, let's say you want to do a BIOS flashback, you download the firmware on this 2.0 USB thumb drive, plug it over here, and you can press this button to flash your BIOS, which is called the BIOS flashback. And of course, this is the button for it. Next, you have your Wi-Fi 7 connector or socket, followed by your audio connection, which you have microphone in, your line out, which is meant for your speaker, and also the line in. Now, back to where I was talking about this DP in. As you can remember that I've told you there is this DP half meter cable. One end is to be connected to your GPU DP out, and the other end to this DP in. And when you're doing this, right, you can make use of type C cable to display by plugging either of these 2, only these 2, right, which it says DP. So when you connect the type C, right, you can project out with any monitors that is having type C connector. Now, next thing I want to talk about is this Wi-Fi socket. As I mentioned to you, the Wi-Fi antenna, in the past we need to screw this in, but for this, right, you can just plug in. See, it's done. And to remove this, right, you just pull it out. Of course, you need a bit of force to take it out. There are two more PWM fan header over here, which I've forgotten to mention. This is for your rear fan. Now, Asus have in fact done another wonderful thing, which I'm going to show you. As you can see, right, the PCIe slot, if you want to plug your GPU, these are spring loaded. As in, like, see, it doesn't stay in place, it will just goes down. So when you plug the card in, right, this will go up. And to remove, right, I'll show you how it's being done. You don't have to press this at all. Same goes to the top. So if you are to plug your graphic card, which right now I'm going to plug. So when you align, right, you plug. See, this is in. It will hold, see, it holds the whole motherboard because of the front catch, it catches. And if you want to remove, right, instead of pressing the latch, you can just do this. See, you just take it out, removing from the back. Because when you remove off from the back, right, how the mechanism works is this way. When you plug your graphic card in, this will lock in place. And when you remove off from the back, pulling from the back, right, this thing will release. As the mechanism, right, is this way, assuming that you have plugged the graphic card in. Okay, so if you pull it back, right, leaving some gap, right, this will spring back to the lower position, so you can just unplug the whole card out. Another very unique function on this board, whereby you have connected your 24 pin, but let's say you've forgotten to plug your 8 pin to the rear. When you turn on, see, it lights up telling you that something is not connected, which is your 8 pin. This is not a flaw, but I just want to point out. Now, as mentioned to you, the top section where you have this. Now, if your M.2 is only one-sided chip, okay, this is one-sided, no issue, you can just plug. And to put this back, it will fit nicely. See, it keeps in place. Alright, let me just press this. See, not an issue. But if your M.2 is of double-sided clip, I mean chip, like this, right? Yes, you can place the M.2 in. Okay, barely going. But when you try to put the armor shield back, which I will show you here, I can't go down. Okay, not at all. If I force it, right, the M.2 chip will break. Reason being, right, because of double-sided, it elevates up, so you can't close this at all. At this point of time, as I mentioned, this is not a flaw. What you can do is remove the bottom plate, which I'll do it right now. You can remove this bottom plate, but the only thing is that you will lose the bottom thermal pad. Then with this double-sided chip M.2, right, not an issue. You can just plug it back and to clip it in place. Then from here, right, when you remove this off, right, it's not pushing your M.2. Then you can place this in. See? Not an issue. But the thing is, when you do this, right, because there's nothing pushing the M.2 up, so you might need to have a look over here whether the M.2 is touching the thermal pad. So this is something you need to take care of if you are using a M.2 that has double-sided chip. This is the UEFI or BIOS mode of this motherboard, which is the ProArt X870E motherboard. To come to this interface, when you boot up the system, just press delete key and it will take you to this. What you see here is the easy mode. You can toggle between easy mode and advanced mode. In order to do that, it's either you press F7 key or to click on the lower right where it says advanced mode. Once you do this, right, either way, press this or press F7, it will take you to the advanced mode. There are more features and more function for you to tweak your system in advanced mode, which I will show you later. Back to the easy mode, whereby on the top left hand corner, it will show you the stats of this system, whereby it shows you the processor, what you're using, the memory capacity, how much RAM you're placing, either 32 gig kit, 64 gig kit and such. It will reflect over here. Next will be where did you populate the RAMs on the RAM slot of your motherboard. As you can see here, I populated a 32 gig kit plugging onto the A2 and the B2 slot. Right below, this is the Expo engagement profile, whereby you can enable or disable. Right below the Expo one-click function, you have this fan profile where it shows you what are the fans you have connected to the motherboard fan header. Right now, I'm only plugging into my air cooler fans to the CPU fan. That's why you can see that the RPM is reacting. If you populated all the headers, right, it will show all the RPMs of the various fans section. And to tweak this fan curve manually, you can use this, which you see over here, Q fan control. Once you click here, right, you can set individually as which header to set your customized fan curve. Now back to where I was. Right at the top, you'll see that the temperature of your CPU and the motherboard, also the core voltage that is drawing. Right below, storage information. Now for this illustration, I'm not plugging any M.2 or SSD. I plug in two different USB thumb drive just to show you how the boot priority works. So these are the things that we'll list out. If you plug in more M.2s and such, all the description will be listed over here. On the top right where it says easy tuning, system tuning, this is just one click. If you want to run it as normal default, you can leave it as it is. But if you feel that the system can do better and you are providing good liquid cooling solutions, you can just click this to become AI optimized. This will allow your motherboard to determine how much cooling that you provide to it and what the capability of the processor based on the processor bin. And this is actually by Silicon lucky draw, I should say, to have the best bin, and you will push further up the frequency and to perform much better. And before you do this AI optimized, I would to advise you to click here at the top where it says AI overclocking guide. Read through the whole document, understand how your system function before you use the AI optimize function. Now right below the easy tuning, there's this boot priority. Now this is where it comes to play, whereby I told you I placed two different thumb drive, assuming the first one, which has the naming vendor CEO product code, this is Linux, and the Viber team as Windows. If this is the order, right, when you boot up the system, it will boot to Linux. If you do not want that, you can change the boot sequence. For example, the Viber team is actually on Windows, right, Windows OS. You can just press this, pull it up, so that Viber team will be at the top. Meaning to say the Windows OS is at the top. Save it. Every time when you reboot, it will boot up with Windows OS. Or on the go, you wouldn't want to save these settings, right? Let's say you're on Linux, you just want at default it's putting at Linux, and at times you just want to go to the Windows interface. You can come to this UEFI, then press on F8. You see here, boot menu. When you set this, right, you can select which to boot, and the system will just boot to that you have selected, and this will not save as your boot party. Hope that makes sense. Next will be at the top where you see the date and time. You can set the date and time, especially when you purchase the board and it's not on the right date or time. Just click on here and you can set the time and date. And you can set languages, as in like if you want to read all this instruction here in Chinese, you can set this, or Dutch, or even in Spanish and such. And as for this, the AI overclock, this is a documentation. I would advise you to read through before you use this AI optimization or AI overclocking. For the search button, it's pretty straightforward. Example, you know of a function that is in this UEFI, but you can't find it. So let's say, for example, I want to configure the fan in one of the selected category. So you can just type fan and search. Click on OK to search. Then from there, you'll be able to find the function that you wanted. For example, let's say I want to set the CPU fan low limit. I can do it from here. Then followed by the aura. Now as for aura, there is all, stealth, aura only, or aura off. If you wouldn't understand what this means, you can always hover on this button and it will tell you all the functions, which I will not go through here. You can read it yourself, to turn off the LED on your debug code, or to turn off the ARGB function on your ARGB headers on the motherboard. Next will be resizable bar. This is meant for your NVIDIA graphic card. You can turn it on or turn it off. By default, it's on. Now to the advanced mode. As you can see, it brings you to another interface. This is the advanced, where you can go deep into it and to tweak your system. I will not go deep into it, just to show you. First off, you have the favorites, and these are the shortcut, or you can choose to pin any of the functions over here. For example, you want to pin this, right, and to set it over here, you can do that, no problem. So it will show you over here a one stop where you can do all the settings. Next will be the main, just like the easy mode, where you can change the language, as you can see over here. Then you can set the security. If you were to choose to secure your settings and not let your sister or brother to touch your computer and to mess up with the BIOS setting or the UEFI setting, right, you can set administrator password. Or if you choose that your setting not to be touched, but your sibling can access and to do their own profile, you can just set a user password for them to configure to their profile. Then next will be the AI tweaker. Now for AI tweaker, this is where I mentioned that I'm not enable XMP Expo profile on the RAMs. You can set it over here. See, you can set even more profile over here. So this you got to try, but for me, I'll just set it to Expo 1, the easiest. Then all this you can set accordingly to your own prescription, even the CPU core ratio. Now at auto is actually, I believe it's actually at 58, if I'm not wrong. You can set it higher or more. GPU boost, this is only whereby if you to use the integrated GPU on your processor itself. Now the DRAM control, these are into the timings and such, the cache latency, and to tighten up the timing, as you can choose. Then next will be precision boost overdrive. Now this is often used by people who like to underclock, or should I say undervote or overclock their system. Just a brief through. At precision overdrive, this is what you'll see. You can set all this, but majority will do with the precision boost overdrive over here, where you enable. It can be econ mode, it can be just enabled, let the system detect. This is almost the same function as the AI optimizer, but AI optimizer or AI overclocking, right, it's much better as everything is calculated to the max. But as for precision overdrive, right, you have more control over it, as you can control manually or to let the processor to calculate what is best for it instead of having the motherboard to calculate. So that's the difference between precision boost overdrive method when you have it enabled, or the AI overclock or AI optimizer. AI optimizer or AI overclock, right, what it does is it makes use both the processor and the motherboard to determine which is the best performance. Now, so as mentioned, precision boost overdrive, you want to do manual overclocking or undervolting, you can always set over here, setting the PPT limits and such. Okay, and right at the bottom you can set the curve optimizer. See, and you're done with the settings, right? You can set either per core, which lists out all the cores. You can tweak them manually one by one, or you can set it all with negative value, which is undervolt, positive value, which is overclock, and the magnitude of how much you want it to undervolt or overclock, which you can set over here. So for this system, I will just set it auto. Now, for all 9000 series processor and the update BIOS on the 7000 series processor, right, you have this additional called curve shaper. I'll explain to you this, what it does. Okay, a new function coming from AMD, whereby a lot are familiar of using the curve optimizer, but not on the curve shaper. So this is the enhanced mode of what the latest BIOS can do on both 7000 series and the 9000 series. So these are just the brief run. Next will be advanced, where you can set, okay, for Windows 11 you need to have this FTPM enabled before you can install the Windows 11. Then the UEFI variable you can set up to you. CPU configuration, okay, just a brief run on all what it does. The PCIe subsystem, where you can set the resizable bar to enable. See, by default it's actually enabled. So the 4G decoding and the resizable bar support, right, is enabled. Next will be USB configuration. All is enabled and auto. If you do not have the usage on certain USB drive, the latency USB port, right, for example the USB 2.0, you can just disable it, but normally I'll just leave it. And next will be network stack. This is very in-depth, I will not go into it. The NVMe configuration, okay, there's no NVMe. If you have, right, it will show you what are the NVMe on the system itself. Then for the hard disk, now for the hard drive, right, if there are any hard drive, you can set the value on the hard drive to perform or to enable and disable the hot swap. SATA configuration, this is where for the hard disk and smart information, it tells you the stat is being diagnosed, whether is it good, bad or such. It's just a quick check on your hard drive. Now for the SATA configuration, this is whereby it will show you all your SATA that's connected to your system, and if you want to have hot swap, as in like to remove the SSD out from the SATA, right, you will have to enable the hot swap, which you can see over here, hot plug. So when it's disabled, right, you cannot just unplug the hard disk when the system is on. If you enable this, that will be a different story. On your Windows itself, when it's still on operation, right, on the lower right hand corner there will be a USB icon. You can right click and to eject whatever SSD you want to take out. So once you eject that, right, you can just unplug it while the system is on. And if you do not enable this, right, please do not do that, right? You will damage your SSD. Okay, AMP configuration. I often use this based on the fact that I use my mobile phone to turn on my PC. So I will have this PCIe power as enabled. Maybe I'll do a tutorial on this, on how you can remote start your PC without touching the power button by using just your smartphone. Should be, I mean, can be iPhone or Android devices. Okay, onboard device configuration, it shows you all this configuration whereby your, onboard audio, if you want it, if you want it on, just leave it enabled. If you don't use it and you're using a audio console or maybe a another sound card and such, you can disable this. Then the two LAN, which is 2.5 Intel NIC, and the Marvell 10 gig LAN card, both are enabled. If you only use one, for example the 10 gig, right, you can just leave this enabled and disable the 2.5. It's up to you, but I'll just leave it on. Wi-Fi controller, if you want Wi-Fi, of course you leave it on. If not, you can turn it off. Bluetooth control, same thing. You want the function, leave it on. You don't want, just shut it off. Now, the good thing about shutting off ports that you do not need, right, you will save energy and your boot time will be faster, and also to the fact that it will perform even better if some of the devices is not on auto detect. Now, this is the same as Aura, which I showed you earlier on the easy mode, which is this. You can set it manually over here. Now, for monitor, this is whereby it will monitor your CPU temperature and such in details. And if you have sensor, which this motherboard has the 3-port sensor, you will need to purchase a additional cable for that in order to detect certain areas. So it will show over here if you have plugged that. Okay, and this is the RAM temperature. So these are the in-depth temperature. Next will be fan speed monitoring. It will only show you the RPM of the fans that we've connected to this system. Followed by the voltage monitor. Okay, how much is being drawn, as in like how good your PSU is based on this. See, my PSU is consistently at plus 12 volt, which is good on the 12 volt rail. 5 volt, which is okay. It will be best if it's at 5 or 5.1. Then at the 3.3 volt standby, the standby power and such. So this tree here is in fact monitoring. And to configure the fan, okay, this is the one that you do it manually. As in like, this is the CPU fan. The chassis fan, you have to go into the sub menu. Okay, let me just show you. Oh, there are no, okay. See, chassis fan 1, chassis fan 2, fan 3 and such. This is for you to have total control instead of using this, which is F6. Okay, it will be easy to use this interface to control the fan curve, but some veteran or expert, they prefer to have total control in keying numbers and such. They will make use of this. See, you can set the different level. If I were to set it custom, right, okay, manual. See, I can key in the numbers. So this is actually for expert or veteran. Okay, right, I'm just going to leave it standard. So this is how it looks like in the monitor interface, whereby you can control the fan, even your pump. This is dedicated. Okay, one thing I like about Asus is that they have this dedicated section for only pump, whereby it controls your AIO_pump header on your motherboard. So you can set it PWM, you can set it full speed, or you can even set manually. But for my personal advice, right, for AIO pump, I will leave it consistent at full, or to run it all at 80%. Okay, yep, all this to 80%. This is interesting. Okay, reason being, right, you want to have your pump motor to run consistent and not fluctuate. having a fluctuate pump, right, as in like the pump motor will go up, I mean like spin up, spin down, spin up and spin down, right? In no time your pump will be damaged. Trust me on this, I've tested this many times. So it's either, as mentioned to you, right, the pump, you set it to full 100%, or if you want to configure, set it to 81% or 80% consistently. All right, now for this, most of us do not use this. This is used on a OEM case where you have this detection if the case side panel is being open, right? This is the detection and warning that you will see on the screen, which we do not do. Next will be boot. If you have used legacy ports and such, if there's a need for those devices, you can set your CSM to on. But at the moment, no, you can't set it to on. The basic fact that you have enabled the resizable bar. But anyway, we are not using this. Secure boot. Okay, it will tell you what mode and such, so you can select. But I'll leave this alone. I will not touch it. Then boot configuration, as I show you on the easy mode, this you can select too. See, up to you to configure which is the priority boot. Or if you don't want to, I mean, you're not going to set the priority, let's say you leave it as it is, you just want to boot up to the other OS in a go, you can select over here and boot. Next will be the tool whereby you want to flash your BIOS to the up-to-date version. You can use this. It will take you to the BIOS as you have placed in your thumb drive. As you can see, I have the latest Asus for this ProArt X870E, which I will show you later. So you can do that, or you can roll back the BIOS as in like enable before you do the flash. Meaning to say it will save a backup copy. If the main copy failed, right, you can use the backup as in like roll back to the workable BIOS mode. This I wouldn't know what this is, and these are the flex key and such, which I will not go into it. Then BIOS queue utility is telling you what is being plugged. This is one thing that is pretty cool. So for example, let's say you want to see like, you know, what are the ports that's being used up on your USB or the fans, right? What is being plugged and such. You can click on it and it will take you to the interface to configure it. It's a very neat function. But one thing I kind of like feel weird, when you click on certain function, right? See, if I were to, okay, not this. If I were to click on this, right, and I press escape, right, it should bring you back to that interface, but it did not. So this is something which I hope that Asus will, you know, do something about it. So when you're in this BIOS queue mode, right, whatever you have clicked, it will bring you to the configuration page. But I hope that when you press escape, right, you'll bring back to this page so that I can continue to configure. So this is the, I mean, this is the reason why I feel that this is good. But there is a minor flaw on this, as shown you, right? Okay, let me explain. Let's say you want to configure the CPU. Okay, when you click on this, right? Okay, maybe, oh sorry, not CPU fan. See, it will take you to the configuration page. So once you have done this, right, when you press escape, see what happened. It went to the advanced page or advanced mode page, where you have to click on BIOS queue utility again, which I find that it's kind of like hassle. For example, memory. Okay, maybe not memory, the USB. See, when I click on here, it will take me to this configuration. But the thing is, when I press escape, see, it went to a random page. So I have to go back to tools and to click on the BIOS queue dashboard. So this is something which I wanted Asus to know. Probably you can do something about this. So when you press escape key from the configuration page, right, it will bring you back to this interface, which is much more practical. The rest, like, you know, ASUS user profile and such. I will not go into this. This is whereby you can save your overclocking settings or your undervolting settings. Then the SPD, this is meant to see what kind of RAMs you're using. Okay, especially you want to know what manufacturer, SK Hynix and such, and it will tell you the timing and such. Hotkeys, well, I don't use this. Now, driver hub, this is whereby one thing good, once you have installed the operating system, right, when you boot to the first start, okay, it will prompt you to install driver directly. You don't have to go to the website, to this motherboard official website, right, and to click on support and to download the drivers and such. A one click button where it boots up to Windows, right, it will surely tell you, hey, install a driver. So this is what the ASUS driver hub is. See, download and install ASUS driver hub application. So this is actually an on enable. You can just leave it enable. And last but not least, the exit section. I don't think I need to explain this. It's pretty straightforward. Whatever configuration you have done, you want to reset, just load optimize default. Now, save changes, there are a few. There are a few information that you will see over here, what you have done and such. Have you done the tweak? Do you did the tweaks and such? It's just like you are ordering a meal from McDonald's and the waiter will tell you, oh, is this order, is that order? So it's just a counter check. Then once you're okay, you just click on okay and you will save and you will just reboot. Discard changes and that's it. I don't have to say this. Load EFI shell from USB. Well, this is actually another function where it makes use of Linux, where you can load the configuration from the USB drive. This section here is a bit of tips and hint to you, where as you can see, right, I'm using a 9950X processor. Now, be whether you're using 7000 series or the 9000 series, you can apply this. I would urge you, when you got your motherboard, update the BIOS to AGISA 1.2.0.2. Reason being, right, starting off with the AGISA 1.2.0.1, be it you're doing it on your X670E motherboard or the X870E motherboard, all this will work. Just update the BIOS to the latest, and I'll advise on this version, which is 1.2.0.2, whereby it improves a lot on the AMD performance and such. But do take note, read your instruction manual properly on how to do the BIOS flashback or to do the manual update through your UEFI interface, because I will not hold any responsibility if you break your board. So take note on this. Now, earlier on I mentioned on the PVO2 settings and such, this is meant for if you are challenging enough to, use lesser watts or amperage, but to boost the performance. Starting off with, earlier on I talked about the AI tweaker, where you have this precision boost overdrive. This is where you configure the PVO2 limits. As you can see over here, right, precision boost overdrive, I can set it to manual. Now, one thing good about this manual over here, you can set to enhancement mode, where you can set the thermal limit. You wouldn't want your processor to go on 90 degrees and above, 80 degrees and above, and 70 degrees and above. It will adjust accordingly, and no hassle. It's just a one click and go, and you can just boot the system and to enjoy. But if you are more challenging, right, you can set it manually. Okay, before I set to manual, or if you want to run the system as cool as possible, you can set it to AMD Eco mode. And this Eco mode, again, you have all the wattage that you wanted. Let's say you want it to be the least wattage used, you can set it to this, or 105 or 170 watt. It's all up to you. But when using Eco mode, right, do be careful that you might face some performance performance drop. Okay, but if you're comfortable with it, you can go ahead and use the Eco mode. Now, back to the manual. This is more challenging, where a lot of you will be doing. You will be setting the PPT limit, the TDC limit, or the EDC limit. I would advise you to leave this as auto, let the system decide, or have the system to think for you what are the limitations that the processor can cater for, as in like the capability. And when you have this right, a significant boost will be setting the curve optimizer. Okay, this is whereby you can set all core to negative. If you set it to negative, meaning you say you want to undervote, but not suffering from the performance. So you can set your max is at 30, negative 30, but I would advise, if you can, just set it to 20, so that you give some buffer for the system to draw the amperage and the wattage. Okay, or you just want to the extreme, because sometimes when you run at negative 30 rate, the processor at a long run might not be able to cater for such drastic pull. So if you set it too drastic, right, it might cause instability. So do note on that. I would advise to set it to 20, leave it. Now, this is the olden way of doing it. Now there is a additional add-on improvement, which is the curve shaper. For curve shaper, I would advise you to set this curve optimizer to 15 if you want to play with the curve shaper, because what it does is, okay, let me just take you to the curve shaper. You have all these points which breaks into section, 3 of each. Okay, you have the minimum, the low, the mid, the high, the max, all this with 3 points. So assuming, okay, let me just show you an example, not really an example, but the graph here over here. Now imagine that you have the load line calibration at the top of this line. Okay, that will be the default wattage that's been drawn, or amperage being drawn. If you set curve optimizer on the second line, okay, as I mentioned, on top there is a load line calibration line. If you set to the CO or curve optimizer lower, right, negative 18, right, it will bring down the whole line, right, down. So pulling less wattage, okay, and amperage, and to sustain the performance. So this is how curve optimizer work. As for curve shaper, as I show you, okay, these are the points, 3 sections. On the curve optimizer itself, right, it breaks into 5 sections. You have the minimum, you have the low, you have the mid, you have the high, and you have the maximum. So at each point, right, it breaks up into 3 points. So instead of doing one straight line at each intersection, as mentioned to you, you can bring down further, as in like having a very fine-tuned pull. So this is whereby the curve optimizer comes, curve shaper comes. I would advise not to play with the frequency from minimum all the way to low, because this is at the start. Okay, assuming this is the start, your system will not start to pull wattages and voltage or amperage at the very beginning. It will only pull at the midpoint all the way to the max. So I would advise you to start from the mid of the 3 point. See, when you enable, right, you can pull even further down. See, you can set the value 15 or such, up to you. But of course, you need time and patience to do this. So at every point, right, you can pull it even further. And what I say, fine tune, right, assuming that I'm setting this mid frequency, okay, 3 section. Now, this might be the mid section. For each 3 points, right, that I mentioned to you, right, you can fine tune it, so you can pull down further or pull it up a bit and such. So gradually, right, on the curve shaper, let's say you're pulling this, okay, let's say you're pulling all this, and you find that it's unstable, and at the higher temperature, higher magnitude, you can lower down. See, this is what I mean by fine tune. And at the max, you can set it to probably 5. So instead of having another flat curve to the curve optimizer, okay, assuming this line over here, okay, is the curve shaper, this is the curve optimizer. Instead of having a graduate straight line, right, it will just pull down from the first section up and up. So that's how it's been put. You can fine tune it. Now, for more info about all this regarding about the curve shaper, right, I will leave a link of a very good explainer known as the Skater Benchmarker. He is good in explaining on all this. You can take a look. I'll just leave the URL in my description, and to leave it at my top right hand corner where you can click it and it will explain about curve optimizer and curve shaper. Now, another point where I wanted to point out, okay, I know that I'm not allowed to show benchmark on this X870E motherboard yet, but it doesn't stop me from showing you how it can be done, right? Now, if you want to know how well your 9000 series processor is, trust me on this, okay? On your curve optimizer, right? Where is it? Precision boost overdrive, okay. On your curve optimizer, right, set it to all core -15. And on your curve shaper, starting from the mid frequency all the way to the max frequency, okay, set to -15. All of it. Okay, as you can see here. Enable this, set it, make sure it's all negative, and set it to 15. So your curve optimizer and your curve shaper, right, both are on -15. This is to stretch the CPU, or should I say the AMD 9000 series, to see that you are having a good DIMM processor, as in like the silicon is good. Okay, I know this is daunting. See, I'm actually keying one by one, which is very tedious, but you will yield good result. So as mentioned, right, curve optimizer. Okay, let me bring you to the curve optimizer. All core -15. And for the curve shaper, set it starting from mid. As where I mentioned, right, mid section is where it start to pick up and to draw more power, and the temperature will increase. Set from mid all the way to max. Okay, to -15, and you boot the system and do a benchmark and to run a stable test. If it's stable, right, you can further play with only the curve shaper. Okay, so this is the key point whereby it allows fine tuning, so you can pull it down further. And do note, when you're doing this, right, your performance will be uplift as compared to just to do the curve optimizer. And this will not hurt the system at all. In fact, it's undervolting, it's not overclocking. But if you are doing positive, right, as in like overclocking, then you will need to take extra care. That I will not cover because I do not like to overclock. So there you have it, the 9000 series. You can do this just to find if your silicon bin on the chip is good. If it does not survive both curve optimizer and the curve shaper as -15 value, okay, still leaving the curve optimizer -15, the curve optimizer, which is this, leaving this, but fine tune the curve shaper. If you can't do -15, right, do -10, bring it down. Oops. Okay, bring it down. All the value, bring it down. Or should I say bring it up, because -15 to -10, right, is up. So set this setting and run again, do your stability and such, until you come to a point whereby it doesn't crash and it's stable. Then that will be the maximum. Alright, there are lots of things to play with, so you have to be mindful If you are undervolting, it's okay to play with the figures, but if you are doing overclocking, as this are positive, right? If you set it positive, right, you have to be very careful. My personal opinion of this Asus ProArt X870E, starting off with the design, it retained the same as the previous model, which is the X670E, but with good features. As you can see, right, starting off with the design, is very sleek, very mature, and I like it very much based on the fact that I can do stealth black builds, and there are no ARGB nonsense. So sorry to say this, I do not like ARGB because I find that by having more ARGBs, right, you need to supply current to all those ARGB stuff, and having to generate lights in the case itself, it will generate more heat, and that you will have to spend more on the cooling just to keep your system cool. Else, for this board, it doesn't have that, and most of the current is being provided on the board itself to reach out to all the potential of the other components like your M.2, your RAMs and such, and even cooling down furthermore so that your processor, right, can uplift, especially when you toggle the AI optimizer, which this board is built in with. It will just pull the max out of everything, which is good. And another factor is that the function of this board, starting with the M.2, I like the mechanism of this. It's very straightforward and you just clip on. Same goes to the bottom section, no screws needed, plug, play and go. Now, also to the fact that your graphic card, when you slot to the PCIe slot, these two lanes over here, or these two slots, now this clip, right, in the past you will have to plug in and this will be locked in the position, and in order for you to take out the graphic card, you got to press this clip, release this latch before you can remove the graphic card. And as I've illustrated to you, you don't have to do that, as this is spring loaded, meaning to say when you plug your graphic card, this will lock in place. And to remove off the graphic card, just pull off from the back, okay, leaving a gap, right, this will just spring down to a lower position and you can just take out the card. Easy access. Next thing will be the ports. My goodness, it's full of it. Looking at the rear, right, all this USB type A, they are catered for transfer rate of 10 gigabit per second, which is good. I don't have to think, oh, which port should I use for 10 gigabit or 5 gigabits. And the only port that does not have 10 gigabit is only this USB 2.0, which is meant for your BIOS flashback on the firmware. And you are thinking that, oh, I have greater device that make use of Type-C and the transfer rate is at 40 gigabits per second, right? You can make use of this two port at the front, or should I say at the top. Then for this, right, it's 20 gigabits per second. And on top of which, right, if you have monitor that make use of Type-C cable only, especially those portable ones, and you can't project out unless you have an adapter. So Asus have thought about it. Instead, from your discrete graphic card, plug the DP cable out and to the DP in, so that you can make use of this two Type-C port to connect to any monitor that using Type-C and to project whatever you need to see, which is very straightforward. Overall, I would say that this board is built solid, and if you're thinking of overclocking using this board, right, I would advise you can skip. In fact, this board is meant for workload, as in like for content creators, for people who does rendering on 3D animations and such. This is a pure workforce motherboard that allows you to have all those functions that is needed, which is great. Another thing is that the layout of the fan headers, I like it very much, is spread across the whole board, whereby assuming this is the top where you place your AIO, the radiator fan connectors, right, you can just connect over here. As for the rear, you can connect over here. At the bottom, you can connect here or here. And for the top, for the front, you can connect to here. So all this are well planned, which is nice. Now coming to the flaws, I wouldn't say this is a flaw, but as I show you, right, there's only one thing that I dislike about it. it's not Asus fault, it's just that in general, in future, right, most of the M.2s, as you can see over here, right, this is single-sided chip, not double-sided. The back is flat. So in order for you to use this topmost M.2 slot, right, you can just slot it in and to plug this back. But if you have double-sided chip, okay, you can't fit it in and to close this latch. Lucky thing is that you can remove off the bottom, this whole piece here, which I showed you earlier. Then you'll be able to slot in the double-sided chip M.2 and to close this in. But when you close this in, right, do take note that when you place a double-sided chip M.2 to this slot, right, this metal piece, in fact, having the thermal pad, right, is pushing your M.2 up, so that when you close the top, it will touch. If you to remove off this, right, there are no support at all, so you got to take note and to take care of having the top touching the M.2. Okay, assuming this is removed. So this is something that you have to take note about. As I mentioned, this is not the flaws on what Asus have done. They've done a brilliant job because most of the M.2s, right, are single-sided, not double-sided. I hope you guys have enjoyed what I've shared with you, and with this said, I'd like to thank Asus Singapore to have provided this board for me to share with you guys. And if you are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.